Hello, it's Claire here from Come Back Brighter. So I was having a chat with a client yesterday, and there was something that I revealed in the conversation that I think had a huge effect on my client. So I really want to share it with you today. And that was when I was talking about how a narcissist sees their child. Okay. And this applies to their grandchildren too. Okay. So how a narcissist sees a child is as not as a growing and developing human being. What they see their child is as a miniature adult. Okay. And from that, they make all these assumptions that the child has had experience, has learnt, and knows exactly what they're doing. So when a child does something wrong, they see that as the child deliberately doing something wrong. But in actual fact, it's all about the child growing and learning. And this is something I realized that with my own son, is that I was looking at him thinking he knows exactly what he's doing. So I was looking at him like a miniature adult. And this is what you'll find. I found since I've had my son that it's really shown the toxicity of the way in which I was parented, because I automatically go into certain behaviors which are not the best, not healthy, and are following the same patterns that I'm habituated to. However, I will reflect on these things, especially if it doesn't work, especially if my son gets upset, especially if I feel like crap about myself. I'll think, oh, that didn't work. I'm going to try something different. So that's how I know, because what I've done is I've gone through the stage of thinking he's a miniature adult with all the years of experience, decades even of experience, to know how to do things and experimenting and working out what works best or not. And now I truly see him as a child who is learning, who is making mistakes, who's doing things wrong, and it's all part of the learning process. So what I'll say to him now, instead of it being, if he does something wrong, instead of going crazy, which is exactly what my parents would do, and kind of thinking there was like, my parents treated me like there was some sort of kind of like maliciousness to me. If something happened, it was because I'd done it on purpose. And of course, that's how the scapegoat is treated. So instead of doing that now, if he does something, I don't go mad. I use the opportunity afterwards. So after he's being sad or angry or frustrated, or after the emotion has passed, to ask him how he would do things differently in the future. And that has been a massive shift in my parenting, when I've realized the difference between how I was parented and how then in turn I was parenting my son, and how to parent in a much more healthy, loving, accepting way to my son. So that's how a narcissist sees you, but they also see you as kind of like a little robot. They want you to do as you're told. They don't want you to question things. They don't want you to have your own desires and needs and everything else. They want you just to do exactly what you're programmed to do, exactly what they program you to do. So they also get frustrated because we're not robots, and we will do our own thing, and we do want to do our own thing, and we don't like all the things that they do. And they take that as an affront. Every time we step out of that robot role, the kind of miniature narcissist role, that we show them that we are different to them, they hate that. They absolutely hate that, because as far as they're concerned, you are just a miniature version of them. And if you're if you're the scapegoat, you're the miniature bits, horrible bits they don't like about themselves. And you're a miniature version. If you're a golden child, then you're the miniature version of the good bits that they like about themselves. Not any truth about the children, but how the narcissist sees their children. Okay, so it's not about you, it's about how the narcissist sees you. why they decide those roles, okay? But once you step out of that robot, and what happens is as you get older, so when you're a small child, you want to please your parents. It's easier for a narcissist to manipulate, very naive, very innocent, very like dependent on parents or grandparents, very easy. That's the kind of golden age up to about the age of about 7, maybe a bit earlier than that. It depends on each child, but there's a breaking point, and that breaking point is the age at which the child starts to say no, starts to express themselves, starts to want a little bit of independence from mum and dad, and or from grandparents. And that'll be the point at which there's the first split. So I actually think that if you've got narcissistic parents, there are multiple discards, okay? Multiple times when your parent will massively reject you, okay? And the first time is about the age of 7 or 8, when the child is starting to want to be more independent. And then the second stage is in the teenage years, okay? And the teenage years is when the struggle for independence, the desire to get away from parents becomes even greater, and your friendships become more important to you. Your image becomes more important to you. Your individuality comes out a lot more. Maybe you're getting a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and your parent doesn't like that either. So the second time when they massively reject you is when you become a teenager. Okay, so I think this is what we found, that the points in which in our childhood lives we try to break free from the narcissist are the times when the narcissist will discard or reject you. Okay, and I think what it's also kind of like, maybe it's not the whole discard, okay? It's maybe like like most of it, but they'll just hang on just a little bit, because what they want is they want us to be stuck in this fear that they will do it again. They will discard us again, which they do. They do those 2 different stages around the age of 7, and then about teenager, maybe a bit younger than teenager. It depends on the child. But I'll be willing to bet that you could probably see back in your childhood the times when your parent discarded you, or kind of semi-discarded you, because what they want is they want that threat over you. They want you to experience almost the whole discard, because that gives them greater power over you. Okay, a narcissist is all about power and control. Okay, so if you go through like the first 6 or 7 years of your life, everything's okay, maybe there's a few little bits of uncomfort, you're still on eggshells, you're still trying to please the narcissist, you're still terrified of them, and then comes the first discard. After that period, then you're much more terrified, you're much more likely to concede to what they want. You then kind of become in even more terror, easier to manipulate, because you've experienced that heartbreak of the first rejection, the first discard. And then it happens again as a teenager, and then that can sometimes be the precursor of what's going to happen in your adulthood. Okay, because this is the whole thing. The narcissist wants you anxious, terrified of them, not knowing how they're going to behave. They want to feel like pleasing them is a matter of life or death. It's all about survival. So if they can do like the semi-discard at 7 and then another one at 14, that's enough to keep you on your toes. That's enough to make you realize this is real. This is real. The threat of being abandoned is real. Okay, because there's so much to be thinking, oh, I'm wary, I'm a bit scared of my narcissistic parent, I'm on eggshells all the time, I'm anxious. But then to actually experience what it's like to be rejected in that massive way really does focus your mind and go, hang on, this is real. This could happen unless I do whatever it is that the narcissist wants. So at the ages when you're wishing to break free, you're wishing to have some more independence, you're wishing to assert your own individuality, those are the times when the narcissist will knuckle down on you even more, because they don't want you to separate from them. They don't want you to be an individual. They want you to be reliant on them. And that's why they do these things. So this is all completely my theory. This is all based on a chat that I had with a client. And from that, I think that this is what they do, and it's deliberate. So when we're trying to get away, what they do is they claw us back in and pull us as close as they possibly can while we're struggling to get free. And they're saying, if you don't do this, then this will be real. I will reject you. I will walk away from you, and you won't survive. That's what I believe. So from my experiences, my father said to me, when I reached about the age of, I don't know, 7 or 8, my father used to like kind of romanticize about what it was like when I was younger. And he'd be like, oh, you were such a good little girl when you were like 3 years old. And oh, I wish we could have those days back when you were 5 years old. And the real reason then is because I worshipped him. I did exactly what he wanted. I was like moldable, you know, I was controllable. I was completely naive and innocent. I had no desire to be separate from him. I had no desire to be different than him, no desire to be an individual in my own right. And then I hit like 7 or 8, and that was when I started to push back just a little bit. And he didn't like it. So his punishment post that period, and when I hit about 7 or 8, was to say to me, oh, I wish you were still like you were when you were younger. Well, of course he does. Of course he does. And then when he'd say that, I'd think, oh, I need to be more like I was when I was 5. No, and that wasn't a conscious thing. It was never a conscious thing. But it would have affected my behavior for sure. But I didn't know how to do it, because I was where I was. I was the age that I was at the developmental stage that I was at. I couldn't do it. It was beyond my control. But then for me, the shit really hit the fan when I was 14, and I had the family dog died. Both my grandmothers died, so my father's mother and my mother's mother. I was also bullied that year at school, and I did some things as a result of that bullying, which led my father to actually say to me one evening, just it felt like out of nowhere, okay, you treat this house like a hotel, pack your bags because you're going in the morning. And I cried all night. I didn't pack a bag. And then the next morning, it was like he'd said nothing. It was like I dreamt it all. It was never, ever referred to again. Never, ever referred to again. However, I knew from that point that his abandonment of me was real. He would do it if I displeased him enough. So whatever crime I'd committed, I say that in air quotes, whatever crime he thought I'd committed that justified him throwing me out, I don't know what it was. But it could have been that in some way I hurt his fragile ego, and that's what he was so angry about. Because this is the other thing, when you go through something like that, you analyze it. You try to work out, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? And I can't think of what I did wrong at that particular time. There was lots of things that I did when I was 14 that he would have perceived as wrong, because I was being bullied and being controlled by somebody else. But I can't relate anything back to why he would do that specifically. But it taught me, this is real, Claire. This is real. The threat is real. And whatever you do, you may not even be aware of what you do wrong. You've got to be even more aware, even more vigilant about your behavior to make sure that he doesn't have real reason to kick you out, or any real reason to follow through on that threat and actually expect you to be gone the next day. So it worked. I was a very good girl from that point on. And instead of seeking to assert my individuality, instead of wishing for more independence and the normal teenage things, my teenage years were focused on keeping him happy, making sure that he was stable enough so that I didn't get thrown out. Because I had, as far as I was concerned, I had nowhere to go. My world was ruled by my father. So if I'd gone to, say, another family member, all he would have had to do was phone him up and say, don't accept her, don't look after her, don't take her in, don't have her, don't look after her because I don't want you to. So I had nowhere to go. So in parallel with this constant threat that they're going to abandon you is also such a control of your world that the only people they allow in are the people that they can control. They will not allow people in who they aren't in control of, because those are the people that you could run to. And then what could happen is he says, you've got to get out. You go to this person and you get out and you're happy and you get over it and you live a happy life and you never see them again. And that's not, they don't want that. So when they isolate you, when they control your friendships, when they control the family relationships, when they control the family friendships too, it will always be people that they approve of. Always be the people that they can say, look, if she comes to you, you're to tell me and you're not to help her in any way. So that you are trapped with them, so that you will concede to them, so you will do exactly what you want them to do. They're in complete control. And then they've got you exactly where they want you. And those times of the discard, or those times, you can, I'm sure you can think of something. If you've got narcissistic parents, I'm sure you can think of a time when things got really shit. And maybe not about the 7 or 8 years old, but probably around the teenage. That seems to be the most common age when things get really rough. And not rough because of your behavior, rough because the narcissist doesn't want you to break free, to do what you want to do, to be happy, to be secure, to be safe. They don't want any of those things for you. They want you utterly reliant on them. And it's not to be underestimated the amount of trauma it can be to experience the discard, the rejection, the massive rejection at these points in your life, especially as a child. Because what is supposed to be our safe and secure and loving environment is not. It's dangerous. So this also applies to narcissistic grandparents, because your children, if they're in regular contact with your parents who are narcissistic, your children will go through a very similar pattern with your parents. So whatever you experienced, they will probably experience too. And there will be this rejection, potentially around 7 or 8, maybe to 10 years old, maybe a bit younger. As soon as a child starts to say no and asserting their own character, that will be the time when things break a little bit. And then there'll be the big one when they're a teenager too. And that's traumatizing, because we love our parents, we want to please them, and we don't want to be abandoned. We want to be loved and accepted and safe and secure. And it's the same for your children too. And they will love their grandparents. They will love them. And then they will go through the same trauma. So please, please, please protect your children. I hope that this helps. I hope this brings you greater understanding of how a narcissistic parent sees their children and how they see their grandchildren, and really what to expect, the patterns that appear. I've seen this in my my relationship with my parents, and I've seen it in a lot of my clients' relationships with their parents too. There'll be times when things got really rocky, and those will be the times when there was pushback, when you were seeking to be more individual and the narcissist was seeking to assert their power and control back over you again. If you need me, if you need support, if you're looking for validation, you're not sure about your parents, you're not sure about your grandparents, then please feel free to reach out to me, either comment below or email me, Clare, CLARE, comebackbrighter@gmail.com. Bye.